Life can shift in quiet moments when ordinary days reveal hidden turns and unexpected bonds forming between people who never planned to cross paths, and sometimes the smallest knock on a door becomes the beginning of something new, something gentle, something awakening, something that reminds the heart it is still capable of warmth. Don't forget to comment and subscribe to support more stories. The afternoon was slow and gray, and I sat in my sunroom holding a familiar old book, letting the soft light drift across the floor when I heard a steady knock outside my house. I was not waiting for anyone, and for a moment I simply listened to the wind brushing along the walkway before I moved to the window where the lace curtain swayed gently. That was when I saw Daniel, the young man who had grown up next door, no longer the restless boy with a skateboard, but someone older carrying the quiet presence of a long journey. Behind him, he stood there with a hesitant calm, and I felt a tug of curiosity as I opened the door. His greeting carried a warm respect, and though time had changed him, his voice still held an echo of the child I once knew. He said he noticed my car and wanted to say hello, and something inside me brightened at the simple kindness. I invited him in, sensing a familiar comfort in his presence, even as the house felt too quiet around us. Ever since my husband passed, the silence had claimed the rooms, yet with Daniel stepping inside, the space seemed less hollow. I offered him tea, and while preparing it, I caught sight of my reflection, faint lines softened by the warm kitchen light, and a gentle spark in my eyes that surprised me. When we sat together, he looked around, as if stepping into an old memory. He said the house smelled the same, and his smile stirred a nostalgic warmth within me. We talked about small things, the neighborhood, his life in the city, my activities at the library, but beneath the simple conversation flowed a silent understanding. A calm connection neither of us tried to name. He paused at one point, studying me thoughtfully before admitting I had always listened in ways others did not. He spoke of moments long forgotten by me, yet vivid to him, like the day he cried on my porch after his father left, and how I simply sat beside him, letting him feel what he felt without pushing him away. His words touched a place deep inside me, a place I had tucked away for years. The rain began tapping softly against the windows as we moved to the living room, and for the first time in a long while, the quiet did not feel empty, but shared, gentle and steady, and something inside me shifted in a way I could not ignore. When he finally rose to leave, he said he wished to visit again, and the yes I gave him felt natural, rooted, honest. As the door closed behind him, I stood in the softened silence, knowing a new chapter had quietly begun. Within meth days that followed carried a gentle charge in the air, like a quiet thread pulling my attention toward moments I could not fully explain. I went about my usual routines, yet there was a lingering warmth inside me, as if the house itself remembered the sound of another voice besides mine and held on to it tenderly. On Sunday morning, I was tending the roses, trimming edges and brushing away loose petals, when I sensed someone walking up the path before I even looked up. Daniel stood there again, holding 2 coffees, with that calm, familiar expression that had begun to feel less like a surprise and more like a steady presence. He handed me one, saying he still remembered how I took it. Black, and the simple gesture wrapped around me with unexpected comfort. We settled on the porch where sunlight broke through thin clouds, warming the wooden boards beneath our feet. Birds filled the branches above with soft, quick calls, and the breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass drifting from the houses down the street. Sipping the warm coffee, I asked gently if he had found what he hoped to reset in himself. He spoke with quiet reflection, saying he had come back to remember where he started and to rediscover the person he wanted to become. I told him everyone was still becoming, no matter the age, and he looked at me with a thoughtful stillness, holding my words like something that mattered more than I realized. His gaze stayed on me longer, this time carrying a depth that was not romantic, not forward, simply true. He said being with me felt like exhaling after holding his breath far too long. Something in me responded to that honesty with an ache of recognition, because I felt it too, that same release, that same sense of being seen. He hesitated before saying he had thought about calling, but feared making things awkward. I told him I was not afraid of awkward, but I was careful, and he nodded with respect. Then he asked if I remembered when he fell from his bike years ago. Scraping his knee, I laughed softly and said he cried because he was hurting, not because he was weak, and I reminded him how I cleaned the wound and gave him lemonade. He told me I was the first adult who made him feel safe enough to be soft. His words settled deep like a stone dropped gently into still water, and the ripples moved through me slowly. He asked if he could visit again the next day, and though part of me feared crossing unseen lines, another part, softer and far more honest, said yes without hesitation. And so he returned the next morning, then again the next. day and the next, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with only his presence, and we talked about ordinary things. Books, news, childhood memories. The tender truths that build trust over time. Each visit dissolved another layer of the silence that had wrapped itself around my life, and every time he left, I found the house no longer felt empty, but alive with the echo of something meaningful still. Unfolding rain returned the following week, falling in steady curtains that softened the world outside and filled the house with a calm rhythmic hush. I was kneading dough for cinnamon rolls, letting the warmth of the kitchen wrap around me when I heard the familiar gentle knock. Daniel stepped inside with a shy grin, brushing droplets from his hair, saying the house smelled like a memory he grew up loving. I laughed lightly, brushing flour from my hands, and told him he had ruined himself for store-bought sweetness long ago. He removed his jacket and hung it beside the door as though the space already knew him, and he joined me at the counter where the dough waited. I handed him the tray of spiraled rolls and let him slide them into the oven, his movements steady and thoughtful. I found myself watching him, not with longing, but with a quiet awareness of how easily he fit into the rhythm of my home. We sat together as the warm air fogged the windows and the rain softened the world outside. He leaned back with a slow sigh, saying therapy had been helping, though. It stirred old memories like lifting floorboards, revealing pieces of himself he had forgotten or avoided. I listened, gently telling him healing often felt like sorting through old boxes and deciding which parts still belonged. He nodded, saying he felt lighter. Even if the process made him uneasy, sometimes he looked at me with that steady gaze and said, I seemed to bring out a calmer version of him, and that truth landed in my chest with an ache. I had not felt in years, he said quietly, that he had spoken to his therapist about our conversations, about how being here made him feel seen in ways he did not expect. Maybe healing did not always come from offices or structured plans. Sometimes it bloomed in kitchens, where trust flowed naturally. I lowered my eyes, touched by his words, because I had not imagined I could still offer that kind of comfort in this season of my life. He reached for my hand gently and without hesitation this time, and the warmth of his touch traveled through me like a soft awakening. He said he did not need to define what was happening, only that it mattered to him deeply, and I told him that whatever this connection was, it deserved patience and honesty. Neither rushed nor denied. The timer rang, but neither of us moved. Right away, when we finally shared the warm cinnamon rolls, he smiled with a boyish ease that reminded me of years long past, yet shaped by the man he had become afterward. He showed me a sketch he had drawn, a soft pencil rendering of my porch, the rocking chair, the roses, the cribbed mat, and me seated with a distant, thoughtful smile. He said it was how he saw me, steady, warm, real. His voice carried a sincerity that pressed tears into my eyes, though I held them back. I told him I did not know what this was becoming, only that it was real and meaningful, and he nodded, saying he felt the same, and that knowing we understood each other was enough for now. And as his hand rested against mine, the house felt alive with a quiet, tender shift unfolding between us. The following days moved with a quiet anticipation, like the moments before dawn when the sky holds its breath. I went about my usual tasks, folding laundry, watering the garden, tending the small routines that shaped my days. Yet everything felt touched by a new awareness, as if a soft light followed me from room to room, reminding me that I was no longer moving through life entirely alone. One evening after dinner, my phone buzzed with a simple message from Daniel, asking if he could stop by because he needed a place that felt honest. My reply came without hesitation, and when he arrived, his steps carried a tired weight, shadows under his eyes, revealing a long day. Before he even spoke, I met him at the door, the breeze tugging at my cardigan, and gently asked if he was all right. He nodded and stepped inside, saying he needed somewhere quiet, somewhere steady. We sat in the living room with only the small lamp glowing in the corner, casting warm light across the room. I brought him chamomile tea, and he wrapped his hands around the mug, as though he needed the warmth to steady himself. He said therapy had been difficult, that he had faced memories he had avoided for years, especially those involving his father and the expectations that had shaped him into someone he no longer recognized. He spoke with a soft vulnerability, as though each word released a weight he had carried far too long. I listened without judgment, letting the silence between us soften instead of harden. He said he feared that once everything was peeled back, there might not be anything left inside worth keeping. I reached out and rested my hand gently over his, telling him that underneath every layer there is always something true, even if fragile, and that truth is always worth finding. He looked at me with damp, steady eyes, saying I always knew how to speak to the parts of him He had kept it, and I told him I was simply honest, and sometimes honesty was all any of us needed. The room felt full, not with noise, but with a shared understanding that did not need naming. He asked if he could tell me something without it sounding strange. I nodded, and he said he did not come only because the house was peaceful, but because being here reminded him of the person he wanted to be. I felt the truth of his words settle inside me like a warm ember, glowing slow and steady. He said he felt things in this house that he had not felt in years, comfort, belonging, and something deeper he could not yet define. My pulse quickened with recognition, because I had felt it too, that gentle stirring that made the quiet feel alive. I told him whatever this connection was, it mattered and deserved careful tending, and he agreed, saying he simply needed me to know his feelings were genuine, not hurried, not careless. His honesty hung in the air like candlelight, soft, warm, steady, and in that moment, I realized that life, even in its later seasons, could still open new doors, offer new bonds, and awaken forgotten parts of the heart. And as we sat there hand in hand in the gentle glow, I understood that whatever path lay ahead, this connection was no accident, but something real and beautifully unexpected.